Eli Manning, Giants quarterback, is on the list of the 8 most overrated players in the NFL. Uh-oh is right. Uh-oh is right. 476-1045 will be the uh-oh for all you Giant fans out there. Does Brad Gagnon realize that the Giants trained here in Albany for 16 years? We'll remind him of that.
I don't think he cares.
He doesn't care. We welcome Brad to our show, NFL writer, Bleacher Report, CBS Sports, The Comeback. My colleague loves lists, and you've got a list here. Good morning, Brad. How are you? Rodger Weiland, Chris Honorado.
I'm great. How are you guys?
We are fantastic, and of course you can never go wrong when you talk about the National Football League, and around here you can never go wrong when you're talking Giants. So how did you get to this list, and why do you have Eli? Well, first of all, Joe Flacco is 1. Eli Manning, before we go any further, you have as the number 2 most overrated player in the NFL. How did you arrive at that?
You know, Joe Flacco and Eli Manning are 2 guys who sort of, kind of personify the whole debate between, quarterback wins, team sport versus the individual emphasis that we put, especially when we look at quarterbacks. It always came down for me as a guy who covered the NFC East full time for several years. To Eli versus Tony Romo, where Tony Romo was always given, a bad reputation for being the guy who couldn't get the big win in a big moment, and people overlooked the fact there were always 10 other guys in the field with him. Eli Manning was a guy always given credit for getting those wins in the big moment, but we overlooked basically everything else, basically everything outside of those moments. Eli Manning's statistics were significantly worse than Tony Romo's across the board for pretty much every season of his prime and Tony Romo's prime, but no one ever looked at that. No one ever looked at the fact that Tony Romo led more fourth-quarter comebacks and had more game-winning drives and had better fourth-quarter statistics and had better December statistics and had better playoff statistics. It was only the fact that he won those 2 Super Bowls, which is huge. And I've said all along, for all the 10 years that I've been covering the NFL, that Eli deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, despite the fact that he is still overrated. And that's the dynamics of perception that sort of follow guys. And a lot of people stick him. I had people arguing with me, especially before Peyton got his 2nd Super Bowl, because of course Super Bowl seemed to be the measure of how good a quarterback is, which is completely ridiculous. I had people argue with me before Peyton's 2nd one that Eli was better than Peyton. And they would say this with a straight face in comment sections and Twitter comments, and I just couldn't believe it. Do you watch the game, or you just look at who has the most Super Bowls? If you don't want to judge it by who has the most Super Bowls, then Charles Haley is the best player in NFL history. So it doesn't come down to that. It comes down to a lot more. Since 2004, when Eli Manning came into the league, 13 quarterbacks have started 125-plus games, 13 guys. Eli Manning is the lowest rated of those 13 passers. Joe Flacco is the 2nd lowest rated, but Eli Manning at 83.7 is the lowest. His playoff statistics are no better than his regular season statistics. His clutch statistics, his December statistics, his fourth-quarter statistics, none of them are better. None of it is better. He's played on some good teams, some great pass rushes that caught fire in January in 2007 and 2011. 2 Super Bowls to show for it, but aside from that, I mean, if you took those 2 Januaries away and you took Justin Tuck away and you took those pass rushes away and all that for those 2 Januaries alone, Eli Manning's career would be, clearly subpar.
Hey, I covered Eli in 2 Super Bowls. He was phenomenal. And to me, you know what? Throw all the stats away. There's not an NFL team out there that wouldn't trade whatever stats you have for a quarterback who has led the franchise to 2 Super Bowls and has 2 MVP rings. And if you watch either one of those 2 games, Brad, I mean, he was fantastic in both those victories over the New England Patriots. And if you're going to put him in, if you're going to put Eli Manning in the Hall of Fame, how the heck can he be overrated?
Because again, there's different ways we can analyze the game. I think that the Hall of Fame is a mark of literally of fame. I mean, it's in the word, right? It's in the term. I think that those 2 games alone secure him a spot there. But 2 games don't make you a great quarterback. They can make you a legendary quarterback. You know what I mean? There's a difference between your legacy. There's a difference between big accomplishments and being good, being elite, being top level. There's a reason why Eli Manning's only been to a couple Pro Bowls, and why Joe Flacco, if we continue to extend that argument, has been to 0 Pro Bowls. And yet, at the same time, they've both accomplished something that a lot of quarterbacks, have never done, which is to have fantastic playoff performances, to have gotten hot at the right time. In Joe Flacco's case, once, where he had 11 touchdowns and no interceptions in one playoff run, and carried Baltimore all the way through. Again, team game. I mean, if we're going to assign, Joe Flacco or Eli Manning full credit for those playoff runs, then, the 53rd man on that roster should be getting credit too. I mean, we so often overlook the fact that it's a team game. David Tyree doesn't make an incredible catch. None of this counts. Mario Manningham doesn't make an unbelievable catch on the sideline. None of it counts. Now, Eli had to get away from pressure there. Eli had to make that throw. Eli had to obviously make a perfect throw down the sideline to Manningham there, and he did many other great things in those games to deserve those Super Bowl MVPs. But, pull up the list of guys who have won Super Bowl MVP. Again, 1 or 2 games doesn't make a quarterback under or overrated. I mean, it's about his entire body of work when we're analyzing a quarterback's performances. And again, if you take away extremely small samples, you can see why it's quite clear that a quarterback like that would be over or underrated. But again, I don't disagree with you guys, because I'm the one who's saying he's a Hall of Famer. I mean, it's complicated. It's not as cut and dry, as black and white as we all want to make it out to be. And when I have people coming into comment sections and Twitter and all these other places, Facebook, and saying, how can you do this to this guy? He's got 126 career wins, or he's won a championship, and I'm like, that is just, in the ultimate team sport, that is just one piece of the puzzle. And for Eli, it's a great piece of the puzzle, and it's enough to make his legacy something that a lot of quarterbacks could only pray to have, but it's still one piece of the puzzle. And in his case, it inflates his entire image as a quarterback, because he's got these 2 incredibly strong, tiny samples. And so, if anything, it only helps the argument that he's overrated.
Brad Gagnon with us here, national NFL writer for the Bleacher Report. You can find him on Twitter at Brad_Gagnon. Brad, one other name on this list is Colin Kaepernick. He's a free agent, as many people know, and you've got him number 5. But regardless of where he is on this list, are you surprised he isn't on an NFL roster, at least, even though he may be one of the most 8 overrated players in the league?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I think that it's not as cut and dry as we like to see. A lot of people, again, on Twitter and elsewhere, have said to me and others, how is it that Blaine Gabbert, who's clearly an inferior quarterback, has a job and Colin Kaepernick does not? Well, there's a lot of quarterbacks who have jobs that were inferior to Jay Cutler before he finally just gave up on the free agent market and retired, despite the fact it was pretty clear he was interested in continuing his career if someone offered him the right opportunity. There's a lot of circumstances at play with any free agent quarterback, especially a veteran one who's used to making a lot of money and he's used to being the guy. And so, there was a report that finances could have been a factor with the Seattle Seahawks and Colin Kaepernick, but there were reports even earlier this offseason that he may have been seeking $8 to $10 million. He obviously walked away from, 9 figures in order to, or was it 8 figures? What's $10 million? That's 8 figures, right? He walked away from 8 figures in order to give see if he could have a shot somewhere else this offseason. So, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of dynamics at play here, and I'm sure that one of those dynamics is his history, is his, are the protests for a lot of teams. If you do look at the field of NFL owners and their background, and you can look at political donations while you're at it, you'll notice that a lot of teams that sort of need a backup quarterback or could use quarterback help seem to lean right, and the teams that are in pretty good shape seem to lean left in terms of their ownership basis. So it might be just bad luck if we're looking at that factor too for Cap. But someone will get hurt, and that's just inevitable. And when that happens, a team will be desperate enough to say we're willing to take that hit. And it might not be a hit, because this guy also had the highest selling jersey in all of football for much of last season. So I think teams will realize that there are definitely some potential definitely some potential upside to bringing in a guy like Colin Kaepernick, even though, as I do mention, he is still remarkably overrated in terms of his ability to hit second reads, his ability to drop back in the pocket and survey the field, his ability to really do anything except for use his legs to bail himself out of trouble. Not very accurate, not very good numbers, and really it seems like the sort of surprise element that led him to have so much success early in his career wore off, as we saw with a lot of similar type of quarterbacks like Robert Griffin III, for example.
Hey, round out the 8. So you got Flacco, Manning, Wilkerson, Gilmore, Kaepernick. Who's the next 3?
Yeah, we went Jermaine Kearse, who, is not a huge name, but he's kind of like, assumed to be that guy. He's a regular starter in Seattle. Statistically, again, you got to look at numbers versus perception in this. It does get obviously very statistical, but he's a guy who only catches about half the passes thrown his way, despite the fact it's coming from a very accurate quarterback. Doesn't really get a lot of deep balls, doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. Michael Crabtree, kind of a given as the duo with Amari Cooper in that offense with Oakland, but he drops so many passes, continues to do so. And then Cam Newton, who, probably is as controversial as the other 2 quarterbacks we mentioned. Of course, won an MVP a couple years ago, but again, as a passer, looking at him isolated as a passer, the numbers and the consistency and the production just hasn't been there for the majority of his career outside of the small sample size of what the 2015 season. So, a lot of these guys are still good players, but they're viewed oftentimes as, heroic superstar players, and the numbers and the long-term samples don't often support that. And so those are the 8 that unfortunately don this list.
Well, we'll agree to disagree on number 2. I can tell you that. You could talk to me all morning long. I'm not going to buy in that Eli Manning is an overrated player.
That's the beauty of sports, and that's what's so fun about these jobs we have, guys.
Thank you, Brad.
It wouldn't be fun if we didn't disagree.
Exactly. Yeah. Brad Gagnon, thank you. NFL writer, Bleacher Report, CBS Sports. Appreciate a few minutes here on 104.5 at Team ESPN Radio.
Thanks a lot. Take care.